The Red Pyramid, Chapter 28. I have a date with the god of toilet paper. Bast had an interesting definition of interesting. A boiling lake several miles wide that smelled like burning petrol and rotten meat. Our steamboat stopped short where the river met the lake because a giant metal gate blocked our path. It was a bronze disc like a shield, easily as wide as our boat, half submerged in the river. I wasn't sure how it avoided melting in the heat, but it made going forward impossible. On either side of the bank, facing the disc, was a giant bronze baboon with its arms raised. "What is this?" I asked. "The gates of the west," Bast said. Ra's sunboat would pass through and be renewed in the fires of the lake, then pass through onto the other side and rise through the gates of the east for a new day. Looking up at the huge baboons, I wondered if Khufu had some sort of secret baboon code that would get us in. But instead, he barked at the statues and cowered heroically behind my legs. How do we get past? I wondered. Perhaps, a new voice said, you should ask me. The air shimmered. Carter backed up quickly, and Bast hissed. In front of me appeared a glowing bird spirit, a Ba. It had the usual combination of human head and killer turkey body, with its wings tucked back and its entire form glowing. But something about this Ba was different. I realized I knew the spirit's face. An old, bald man with brown, papery skin, milky eyes, and a kindly smile. "Iskander?" I managed. "Hello, my dear." The old magician's voice echoed, as if from far from the bottom of the well. But I found myself tearing up. "You're really dead, then?" He chuckled. "Last I checked." "But why? I didn't make you." "No, my dear, it wasn't your fault. It was simply the right time." It was horrible timing. My surprise and sadness abruptly turned to anger. "You left us before we got trained or anything, and now Desjardins is after us and—" "My dear, look how far you've come. Look how well you have done. You didn't need me, nor would more training have helped. My brethren would have found out the truth about you soon enough. They are excellent at sniffing out godlings, I fear, and they would not have understood. You knew, didn't you? You knew we were possessed by gods. Hosts of the gods. Whatever, you knew. After our second meeting, yes. My only regret is that I did not realize it sooner. I could not protect you and your brother as much as who?" Iskander's eyes became sad and distant. "I made choices, Sadie. Some seemed wise at the time, some in retrospect. Your decision to forbid the gods. My mom convinced you it was a bad idea, didn't she?" His spectral wings fluttered. "You must understand, Sadie. When Egypt fell to the Romans, my spirit was crushed. Thousands of years of Egyptian power and tradition toppled by that foolish Queen Cleopatra, who thought she could host a goddess. The blood of the pharaoh seemed weak and diluted, lost forever. At the time, I blamed everyone. The gods who used men to act out their petty quarrels, the Ptolemaic rulers who had driven Egypt into the ground, my own brethren in the house for becoming weak and greedy and corrupt. I communed with Thoth and we agreed. The gods must be put away, banished. The magicians must find their way without them. The new rules kept the House of Life intact for another 2,000 years. At the time, it was the right choice." "And now?" I asked. Iskander's glow dimmed. "Your mother foresaw a great imbalance. She foresaw the day, very soon, when Ma'at would be destroyed, and chaos would reclaim all of creation. She insisted that only the gods in the house together could prevail. The old way, the path of the gods, would have to be reestablished. I was a foolish old man. I knew in my heart she was right, but I refused to believe. When your parents took it upon themselves to act, they sacrificed themselves trying to put things right because I was too stubborn to change. For that, I am truly sorry. As much as I tried, I found it hard to stay angry at the old turkey. It's a rare thing when an adult admits they're wrong to a child, especially a wise 2,000-year-old adult. You really have to cherish those moments. I forgive you, Iskander, I said, honestly. But Seth is about to destroy North America with a giant red pyramid. What do I do about it? That, my dear, I can't answer. Your choice. He tilted his head back toward the lake, as if hearing a voice. Our time is at an end. I must do my job as gatekeeper and decide whether or not to grant you access to the Lake of Fire. But I've got more questions. And I wish we had more time, Iskander said. You have a strong spirit, Sadie Kane. Someday you will make an excellent guardian Ba. Thanks, I muttered. Can't wait to be poultry forever. I can only tell you this. Your choice approaches. Don't let your feelings blind you to what is best, as I did. What choice? Best for whom? That's the key, isn't it? Your father, your family, the gods, the world, Ma'at and Isfet, order and chaos, are about to collide more violently than they have in eons. You and your brother will be instrumental in balancing those forces, or destroying everything. That, also, your mother foresaw. Hang on, what do you... Until we meet again, Sadie. Perhaps someday we will have a chance to talk further. But for now, pass through. My job is to assess your courage, and you have that in abundance. I wanted to argue that no, in fact, I didn't. I wanted Iskander to stay and tell me exactly what my mother had foreseen in the future, but his spirit faded, leaving the deck quiet and still. Only then did I realize that no one else on board had said a thing. I turned to face Carter. Leave everything to me, eh? He was staring into space, not even blinking. Khufu still clung to my legs, absolutely petrified. Bast's face was frozen in mid-hiss. Guys? I snapped my fingers and they all unfroze. Bah! Bast hissed. Then she looked around and scowled. Wait, I thought I saw... What just happened? I wondered how powerful a magician had to be to stop time, to freeze even a goddess. Someday, Iskander was going to teach me that trick, dead or no. Yeah, I said, I reckon there was a Ba. Gone now. The baboon statues began to rumble and grind as their arms lowered. The bronze sun disk in the middle of the river sank below the surface, clearing the way into the lake. The boat shot forward, straight into the flames and the boiling red waves. Through the shimmering heat, I could just make out an island in the middle of the lake. On it rose a glittering black temple that looked not at all friendly. The Hall of Judgment, I guessed. Bast nodded. Times like this, I'm glad I don't have a mortal soul. As we docked at the island, Bloodstained Blade came down to say goodbye. I hope to see you again, Lord and Lady Kane, he hummed. Your rooms will be waiting aboard the Egyptian Queen. Unless, of course, you see fit to release me from service. Behind his back, Bast shook her head adamantly. We'll keep you around, I told the captain. Thanks for everything. As you wish, the captain said. If Axis could frown, I'm sure he would have. Stay sharp, Carter told him. And with Bast and Khufu, we walked down the gangplank Instead of pulling away, the ship simply sank into the boiling lava and disappeared. I scowled at Carter. Stay sharp. I thought it was funny. You're hopeless. We walked up the steps of the Black Temple. A forest of stone pillars held up the ceiling. Each surface was carved with hieroglyphs and images, but there was no color, just black on black. Haze from the lake drifted through the temple, and despite reed torches that burned on each pillar, it was impossible to see very far through the gloom. Stay alert, Bast warned, sniffing the air. He's close. Who? I asked. The dog, Bast said with disdain. There was a snarling noise, and a huge black shape leaped out of the mist. It tackled Bast, who rolled over and wailed in feline outrage, then raced off, leaving us alone with the beast. I suppose she had warned us that she wasn't brave. The new animal was sleek and black, like the Seth animal we'd seen in Washington, D.C., but more obviously canine. Graceful and rather cute, actually. A jackal, I realized, with a golden collar around its neck. Then it morphed into a young man, and my heart almost stopped. He was the boy from my dreams, quite literally. The guy in black I'd seen before in my Ba visions. In person, if possible, Anubis was even more drop-dead gorgeous. Oh, I didn't catch the pun, but thank you, Carter. God of the dead, drop-dead gorgeous. Yes, hilarious. Now, may I continue? He had a pale complexion, tousled black hair, and rich brown eyes like melted chocolate. He was dressed in black jeans, combat boots, like mine, a ripped t-shirt, and a black leather jacket that suited him quite nicely. He was long and lean like a jackal. His ears, like a jackal's, stuck out a bit, which I found cute, and he wore a gold chain around his neck. Now, please understand, I am not boy crazy. I'm not. I'd spent most of the school term making fun of Liz and Emma, who were, and I'm very glad they weren't with me just then, because they would have teased me to no end. The boy in black stood and brushed off his jacket. I'm not a dog, he grumbled. No, I agreed. No doubt I would have said delicious or something equally embarrassing, but Carter saved me. You're Anubis? He asked. We've come for the feather of truth. Anubis frowned. He locked his very nice eyes with mine. You're not dead. No, I said, though we're trying awfully hard. I don't deal with the living, he said firmly. Then he looked at Khufu and Carter. However, you travel with a baboon. That shows good taste. I won't kill you until you've had a chance to explain. Why did Bast bring you here? Actually, Carter said, Thoth sent us. Carter started to tell him the story, but Khufu broke in impatiently. Aha! Baboon speak must have been quite efficient, because Anubis nodded as if he'd just gotten the whole tale. I see. He scowled at Carter. So you're Horus, and you're... His finger drifted towards me. I stammered. Quite unlike me to be tongue-tied, I'll admit. But looking at Anubis, I felt as if I'd just gotten a large shot of Novocaine from the dentist. Carter looked at me as if I'd gone daft. I'm not Isis, I managed. I mean, Isis is milling about inside, but I'm not her. She's just visiting. Anubis tilted his head. And the two of you intend to challenge Seth? That's the general idea, Carter agreed. Will you help? Anubis glowered. I remembered Thoth saying Anubis was only in a good mood once or twice an eon, so I had the feeling this was not one of those days. No, he said flatly. I'll show you why. He turned into a jackal and sped back the way he'd come. Carter and I exchanged looks. Not knowing what else to do, we ran after Anubis, deeper into the gloom. In the center of the temple was a large circular chamber that seemed to be two places at once. On the one hand, it was a great hall with blazing braziers and an empty throne at the far end. The center of the room was dominated by a set of scales, a black iron T with ropes linked to two golden dishes, each big enough to hold a person, but the scales were broken. One of the golden dishes was bent into a V as if something very heavy had jumped up and down on it. The other dish was hanging by a single rope. Curled at the base of the scales, fast asleep, was the oddest monster I'd seen yet. It had the head of a crocodile with a lion's mane. The front half of its body was lion, but the back end was sleek, brown, and fat. A hippo, I decided. The odd bit was, the animal was tiny. I mean, no larger than an average poodle, which I suppose made him a hippo-doodle. So that was the hall, at least one layer of it. But at the same time, I seemed to be standing in a ghostly graveyard, like a three-dimensional projection superimposed on the room. In some places, the marble floor gave way to patches of mud and moss-covered paving stones. Lines of above-ground tombs, like miniature row houses, radiated from the center of the chamber in a wheel-spokes pattern. Many of the tombs had cracked open. Some were bricked up, others ringed with iron fences. Around the edges of the chamber, the black pillars shifted form, sometimes changing into ancient cypress trees. I felt as if I were stepping between two different worlds, and I couldn't tell which one was real. Khufu loped straight over to the broken scales and climbed to the top, making himself right at home. He paid no attention to the hippo-doodle. The jackal trotted to the steps of the throne and changed back to Anubis. "Welcome," he said, "to the last room you will ever see." Carter looked around in awe. The Hall of Judgment. He focused on the hippo-doodle and frowned. "Is that—" "Ammit the Devourer," Anubis said. "Look upon him and tremble." Ammit apparently heard his name in his sleep. He made a yipping sound and turned on his back. His lion and hippo legs twitched. I wondered if netherworld monsters dreamed of chasing rabbits. "I always pictured him bigger," Carter admitted. Anubis gave Carter a harsh look. "Ammit only has to be big enough to eat the hearts of the wicked. Trust me, he does his job well. Or, he did it well, anyway." Up on the scales, Khufu grunted. He almost lost his balance on the central beam, and the dented saucer clanged to the floor. "Why are the scales broken?" I asked. Anubis frowned. "Ma'at is weakening. I've tried to fix them, but..." He spread his hands helplessly. I pointed to the ghostly row of tombs. "Is that why the graveyard is butting in?" Carter looked at me strangely. "What graveyard?" "The tombs," I said. "The trees." "What are you talking about?" "He can't see them," Anubis said. "But you, Sadie, you're perceptive. What do you hear?" At first I didn't know what he meant. All I heard was the blood rushing through my ears and the distant rumble and crackle of the lake of fire. And Khufu scratching himself and grunting, but that was nothing new. Then I closed my eyes and I heard another distant sound. Music that triggered my earliest memories. My father smiling as he danced me around our house in Los Angeles. "Jazz," I said. I opened my eyes, and the Hall of Judgment was gone. Or not gone, but faded. I could still see the broken scales and the empty throne, but no black columns, no roar of fire. Even Carter, Khufu, and Ammit had disappeared. The cemetery was very real. Cracked paving stones wobbled under my feet. The humid night air smelled of spices and fish stew and old mildewy places. I might have been back in England, a churchyard in some corner of London, perhaps. but the writing on the graves was in French, and the air was much too mild for an English winter. The trees hung low and lush, covered with Spanish moss. And there was music. Just outside the cemetery's fence, a jazz band paraded down the street in somber black suits and brightly colored party hats. Saxophonists bobbed up and down. Cornets and clarinets wailed. Drummers grinned and swayed, their sticks flashing. And behind them, carrying flowers and torches, a crowd of revelers in funeral clothes danced around old-fashioned black hearse as it drove along. Where are we? Anubis jumped from the top of a tomb and landed next to me. He breathed in the graveyard air and his features relaxed. I found myself studying his mouth, curve of his lower lip. New Orleans, he said. Sorry? The drowned city, he said, in the French Quarter, and the west side of the river, the shore of the dead. I love it here. That's why the Hall of Judgment often connects to this part of the mortal world. The jazz procession made its way down the street, drawing more onlookers into the party. What are they celebrating? A funeral, Anubis said. They've just put the deceased in his tomb. Now they're cutting the body loose. The mourners celebrate the dead one's life with song and dance as they escort the empty hearse away from the cemetery. Very Egyptian, this ritual. How do you know so much? I'm the god of funerals. I know every death custom in the world. How to die properly, how to prepare the body and soul for the afterlife. I live for death. You must be fun at parties, I said. And why have you brought me here? To talk. He spread his hands, and the nearest tomb rumbled. A long white ribbon shot out of a crack in the wall. The ribbon just kept coming, weaving itself into some kind of shape next to Anubis, and my first thought was, my God, he's got a magic roll of toilet paper. Then I realized it was cloth, a length of white linen wrappings, mummy wrappings. The cloth twisted itself into the form of a bench, and Anubis sat down. I don't like Horus. He gestured for me to join him. He's loud and arrogant and thinks he's better than me. But Isis always treated me like a son. I crossed my arms. You're not my son, and I told you I'm not Isis. Anubis tilted his head. No, you don't act like a godling. You remind me of your mother. That hit me like a bucket of cold water. And sadly, I knew exactly how that felt, thanks to Zia. You've met my mother? Anubis blinked, as if realizing he'd done something wrong. I know all the dead, but each spirit's path is secret. I should not have spoken. You can't say something like that and just clam up. Is she in the Egyptian afterlife? Did she pass your little hall of judgment? Anubis glanced uneasily at the golden scales, which shimmered like a mirage in the graveyard. It is not my hall. I merely oversee it until Lord Osiris returns. I'm sorry if I upset you, but I can't say anything more. I don't know why I said anything at all. It's just... your soul has a similar glow. A strong glow. How flattering, I grumbled. My soul glows. I'm sorry, he said again. Please sit. I had no interest in letting the matter drop or sitting with him on a bunch of mummy wrappings, but my direct approach to information gathering didn't seem to be working. I plopped down on the bench and tried to look as annoyed as possible. So, I gave him a sulky glare. What's that form, then? Are you a godling? He frowned and put his hand to his chest. You mean, am I inhabiting a human body? No, I can inhabit any graveyard, any place of death or mourning. This is my natural appearance. Oh. Part of me had hoped there was an actual boy sitting next to me. Someone who just happened to be hosting a god. And I should have known that was too good to be true. I felt disappointed. Then I felt angry with myself for feeling disappointed. It's not like there was any potential, Sadie. I chided myself. He's the bloody god of funerals. He's like 5,000 years old. So, I said, if you can't tell me anything useful, at least help me. We need a feather of truth. He shook his head. You don't know what you're asking. The feather of truth is too dangerous. Giving it to a mortal would be against the rules of Osiris. But Osiris isn't here. I pointed at the empty throne. That's his seat, isn't it? Do you see Osiris? Anubis eyed the throne. He ran his fingers along his gold chain as if it were getting tighter. It's true that I've waited here for ages, keeping my station. I was not imprisoned like the rest. I don't know why, but I did the best I could. When I heard the 5 had been released, I hoped Osiris would return, but he shook his head dejectedly. Why would he neglect his duties? Probably because he's trapped inside my dad. Anubis stared at me. The baboon did not explain this. Well, I can't explain as well as a baboon, but basically, my dad wanted to release some gods for reasons I don't quite... Maybe he thought, I'll just pop down to the British Museum and blow up the Rosetta Stone. And he released Osiris, but also got Seth and the rest of that lot. So Seth imprisoned your father while he was hosting Osiris, Anubis said. Which means Osiris has also been trapped by my... He stopped himself. By Seth. Interesting, I thought. You understand then, I said. You've got to help us. Anubis hesitated, then shook his head. I can't. I'll get in trouble. I just stared at him and laughed. I couldn't help it. He sounded so ridiculous. You'll get in trouble? How old are you, 16? You're a god. It was hard to tell in the dark, but I could swear he was blushing. You don't understand. The feather cannot abide the smallest lie. If I give it to you, and you spoke a single untruth while you carried it or acted in a way that wasn't truthful, you would burn to ashes. You're assuming I'm a liar. He blinked. No, I simply... You've never told a lie? What were you about to say just now about Seth? He's your father, I'm guessing. Is that it? Anubis closed his mouth and opened it again. He looked as if he wanted to get angry, but couldn't quite remember how. Are you always this infuriating? Usually more, I admitted. Why hasn't your family married you off to someone far, far away? He asked as if it were an honest question, and now it was my turn to be flabbergasted. Excuse me, deaf boy, but I'm 12, well, almost 13, and a very mature, almost 13, but that's not the point. We don't marry off girls in my family. You may know everything about funerals, but apparently you aren't very up to speed on courtship rituals. Anubis looked mystified. Apparently not. Right, well, what were we talking about? Oh, thought you could distract me, eh? I remember. Seth's your father, yes? Tell the truth. Anubis gazed across the graveyard. The sound of jazz funeral was fading into the streets of the French Quarter. Yes, he said, at least that's what the legends say. I've never met him. My mother Nephthys gave me to Osiris when I was a child. She gave you away? She says she didn't want me to know my father, but in truth, I'm not sure she knew what to do with me. I wasn't like my cousin Horace. I wasn't a warrior. I was a different child. He sounded so bitter. I didn't know what to say. I mean, I'd ask for the truth, but usually you don't get it, especially from guys. I also knew something about being the different child and feeling like my parents had given me away. Maybe your mom was trying to protect you, I said. Your dad being Lord of Evil and all. Maybe, he said half-heartedly. Osiris took me under his wing. He made me the Lord of Funerals and the Keeper of the Ways of the Dead. It's a good job, but you know how old I am? You asked how old I am? The truth is, I don't know. Years don't pass in the land of the dead. I still feel quite young, but the world has gotten old around me. And Osiris has been gone so long. He's the only family I had. Looking at Anubis in the dim light of the graveyard, I saw a lonely teenage guy. I tried to remind myself that he was a god, thousands of years old, probably able to control vast powers well beyond magic toilet paper, but I still felt sorry for him. "Help us rescue my dad," I said. "We'll send Seth back to the Duat, and Osiris will be free. We'll all be happy." Anubis shook his head again. "I told you." "Your scales are broken," I noticed. "That's because Osiris isn't here, I'm guessing. What happens to all the souls that come for judgment?" I knew I'd hit a nerve. Anubis shifted uncomfortably on the bench. "It increases chaos. The souls become confused. They cannot go to the afterlife. Some manage, but they must find other ways. I try to help, but the Hall of Judgment is also called the Hall of Ma'at. It is meant to be the center of order, a stable foundation. Without Osiris, it is falling into disrepair, crumbling." "Then what are you waiting for? Give us the feather, unless you're afraid your dad will ground you." His eyes flashed with irritation. For a moment, I thought he was planning my funeral, but he simply sighed in exasperation. "I do a ceremony called the opening of the mouth. It lets the soul of the dead person come forth. For you, Sadie Kane, I would invent a new ceremony, the closing of the mouth. Ha ha. Are you going to give me the feather or not?" He opened his hand. There was a burst of light, and a glowing feather floated above his palm. A snowy plume like a writing quill. "For Osiris' sake, but I will not insist on several conditions. First, only you may handle it." "Well, of course, you don't think I'd let Carter." "Also, you must listen to my mother, Nephthys. Khufu told me you were looking for her. If you manage to find her, listen to her." "Easy," I said, though the request did leave me strangely uncomfortable. Why would Anubis ask something like that? "And before you go," Anubis continued, "you must answer 3 questions for me as you hold the feather of truth, to prove that you are honest." My mouth felt suddenly dry. What sort of questions?" "Any that I want. And remember, the slightest lie will destroy you." "Give me the bloody feather." As he handed it to me, the feather stopped glowing, but it felt warmer and heavier than a feather should. "It's the tail feather from a Bennu," Anubis explained. "What you'd call a phoenix. It weighs exactly the same as a human soul. Are you ready?" "No," I said, which must have been truthful as I didn't burn up. "Does that count as one question?" Anubis actually smiled, which was quite dazzling. "I suppose it does. You bargain like a Phoenician sea trader, Sadie Kane. Second question, then. Would you give your life for your brother?" "Yes," I said immediately. I know, it surprised me too, but holding the feather forced me to be truthful. Obviously, it didn't make me any wiser. Anubis nodded, apparently not surprised. Final question. If it means saving the world, are you prepared to lose your father? That's not a fair question. Answer it honestly. How could I answer something like that? It wasn't a simple yes, no. Of course, I knew the right answer. The heroine is supposed to refuse to sacrifice her father. Then she boldly goes off and saves her dad and the world, right? But what if it really was one or the other? The whole world was an awfully large place. Gran and Gramps, Carter, Uncle Amos, Bast, Khufu, Liz and Emma, everyone I'd ever known. What would my dad say if I chose him instead? If there really was no other way, I said. No other way at all. Oh, come off. It's a ridiculous question. The feather began to glow. All right, I relented. If I had to, then I suppose I would have to save the world. Horrible guilt crushed down on me. What kind of daughter was I? I clutched the tie-it amulet on my neck, my one remembrance of Dad. I know some of you lot will be thinking, you hardly ever saw your dad. You barely knew him. Why would you care so much? But that didn't make him any less my dad, did it? Or the thought of losing him forever any less horrible? And the thought of failing him, of willingly choosing to let him die, even to save the world. What sort of awful person was I? I could barely meet Anubis's eyes, but when I did, his expression softened. I believe you, Sadie. Oh, really? I'm holding a bloody feather of truth, and you believe me. Well, thanks. The truth is harsh, Anubis said. Spirits come to the Hall of Judgment all the time, and they cannot let go of their lies. They deny their faults, their true feelings, their mistakes, right up until Amit devours their souls for eternity. It takes strength and courage to admit the truth. Yeah, I feel so strong and courageous, thanks. Anubis stood. I should leave you now. You're running out of time. In just over 24 hours, the sun will rise on Seth's birthday, and he will complete his pyramid, unless you stop him. Perhaps when next we meet, you'll be just as annoying, I guessed. He fixed me with those warm brown eyes. Or perhaps you could bring me up to speed on modern courtship rituals. I sat there stunned until he gave me a glimpse of a smile, just enough to let me know he was teasing. Then he disappeared. Oh, very funny, I yelled. The scales in the throne vanished. The linen bench unraveled and dumped me in the middle of the graveyard. Carter and Khufu appeared next to me, but I just kept yelling at the spot where Anubis had stood, calling him some choice names. What's going on? Carter demanded. Where are we? He's horrible, I growled. Self-important, sarcastic, incredibly hot, insufferable. Ah! Khufu complained. Yeah, Carter agreed. Did you get the feather or not? I held out my hand, and there it was, a glowing white plume floating above my fingers. I closed my fist, and it disappeared again. Whoa, Carter said. But what about Anubis? How did you... Let's find Bast and get out of here, I interrupted. We've got work to do. And I marched out of the graveyard before he could ask me more questions, because I was in no mood to tell the truth. The Red Pyramid, Chapter 29, Zia Sets a Rendezvous. Yeah, thanks a lot, Sadie. You got to tell the part about the land of the dead. I get to describe Interstate 10 through Texas. Long story short, it took forever and was totally boring. Unless your idea of fun is watching cows graze. We left New Orleans about 1 a.m. on December 28th, the day before Seth planned to destroy the world. Bast had borrowed an RV, a FEMA leftover from Hurricane Katrina. At first, Bast suggested taking a plane, but after I told her about my dream of the magicians on the exploding flight, we agreed planes might not be a good idea. The sky goddess Newt had promised us safe air travel as far as Memphis, but I didn't want to press our luck the closer we got to Seth. Seth is not our only problem, Bast said. If your vision is correct, the magicians are closing in on us. And not just any magicians, Desjardins himself. And Zia, Sadie put in, just to annoy me. In the end, we decided it was safer to drive, even though it was slower. With luck, we'd make Phoenix just in time to challenge Seth. As for the House of Life, all we could do was hope to avoid them while we did our job. Maybe once we dealt with Seth, the magicians would decide we were cool. Maybe. I kept thinking about Desjardins, wondering if he really could be a host for Seth. A day ago, it made perfect sense. Desjardins wanted to crush the Kane family. He'd hated our dad, and he'd hated us. He'd probably been waiting for decades, even centuries, for Iskander to die so he could become chief lector. Power, anger, arrogance, ambition. Desjardins had it all. If Seth was looking for a soulmate, literally, he couldn't do much better. And if Seth could start a war between the gods and magicians by controlling the chief lector, the only winner would be the forces of chaos. Besides, Desjardins was an easy guy to hate. Somebody had sabotaged Amos's house and alerted Seth that Amos was coming. But the way Desjardins saved all those people on the plane, that just didn't seem like something the Lord of Evil would do. Bast and Khufu took turns driving, while Sadie and I dozed off and on. I didn't know baboons could drive recreational vehicles, but Khufu did okay. When I woke up around dawn, he was navigating through early morning rush hour in Houston, baring his fangs and barking a lot, and none of the other drivers seemed to notice anything out of the ordinary. For breakfast, Sadie, Bast, and I sat in the RV's kitchen while the cabinets banged open and the dishes clanked and miles and miles of nothing went by outside. Bast had snagged us some snacks and drinks, and Friskies, of course, from a New Orleans all-night convenience store before we left, but nobody seemed very hungry. I could tell Bast was anxious. She'd already shredded most royal children to be born in centuries. You're the only chance we have of reconciling the gods and the house of life, of relearning the old ways before it's too late. If you could learn the path of the gods, you could find others with royal blood and teach them. You could revitalize the house of life. What your parents did, everything they did, was to prepare the way for you. Sadie and I were silent. I mean, what do you say to something like that? I guess I'd always felt like my parents loved me, but willing to die for me? Believing it was necessary, so Sadie and I could do some amazing world-saving stuff? I didn't ask for that. They didn't want to leave you alone, Bast said, reading my expression. They didn't plan on it, but they knew releasing the gods would be dangerous. Believe me, they understood how special you are. At first I was protecting you two because I promised. Now, even if I hadn't promised, I would. You two are like kittens to me. I won't fail you again. I'll admit I got a lump in my throat. I've never been called someone's kitten before. Sadie sniffed. She brushed something from under her eye. You're not going to wash us, are you? It was good to see Bast smile again. I'll try to resist. And by the way, Sadie, I'm proud of you. Dealing with Anubis on your own? Those death gods can be nasty customers. Sadie shrugged. She seemed strangely uncomfortable. Well, I wouldn't call him nasty. I mean, he hardly looked more than a teenager. What are you talking about? I said. He had the head of a jackal. No, when he turned human. Sadie. I was starting to get worried about her now. When Anubis turned human, he still had the head of a jackal. He was huge and terrifying and, yeah, pretty nasty. Why? What did he look like to you? Her cheeks reddened. He looked like a mortal guy. Probably a glamour, Bast said. No, Sadie insisted. It couldn't have been. Well, it's not important, I said. We got the feather. Sadie fidgeted as if it were very important. But then she closed her fist and the feather of truth disappeared. It won't do us any good without the secret name of Seth. I'm working on that. Bast's gaze shifted around the room. She seemed afraid of being overheard. I've got a plan, but it's dangerous. I sat forward. What is it? We'll have to make a stop. I'd rather not jinx us until we get closer, but it's on our way. It shouldn't be much of a delay. I tried to calculate. This is the morning of the second demon day? Bast nodded. The day Horace was born. And Seth's birthday is tomorrow, the third demon day. That means we have about 24 hours until he destroys North America. And if he gets his hands on us, Sadie added, he'll ramp up his power even more. It'll be enough time, Bast said. It's roughly 24 hours driving from New Orleans to Phoenix, and we've already been on the road over 5 hours. If we don't have any more nasty surprises, like the kind we have every day, yes, Bast admitted, like those. I took a shaky breath. 24 hours and it would be over, one way or the other. We'd save Dad and stop Seth, or everything would have been for nothing. Not just what Sadie and I had done, but all our parents' sacrifices too. Suddenly I felt like I was going underground again. In one of those tunnels in the first note. Didn't take a break. It approaches, Horace told me. His voice sounded more substantial, no longer in my head. I looked next to me and saw him shimmering in a golden aura, sitting back in the other deck chair in his leather armor with his sandaled feet upon the railing. His sword, a ghostly copy of my sword, was propped next to him. What's approaching? I asked. The fight with Seth? That, of course, Horace said. But there was another challenge before that, Carter. Be prepared. Great. As if I didn't already have enough challenges. Horace's silver and gold eyes glittered. When I was growing up, Seth tried to kill me many times. My mother and I fled from place to place, hiding from him until I was old enough to face him. The Red Lord will send the same forces against you. The next will come at a river, I guessed, remembering my last soul trip. Something bad is going to happen at a river. But what's the challenge? You must be aware. Horace's image began to fade, and the god frowned. What's this? Someone is trying to... A different force. He was replaced by the glowing image of Zia Rashid. Zia! I stood up, suddenly conscious of the fact that I was sweaty and gross and looked like I'd been dragged through the land of the dead. Carter? Her image flickered. She was clutching her staff and wore a gray coat wrapped over her robes as if she were standing somewhere cold. Her short black hair danced around her face. Thank Thoth I found you. How did you get here? No time. Listen, we're coming after you. Desjardins, me, and 2 others. We don't know exactly where you are. Desjardins' tracking spells are having trouble finding you, but he knows we're getting close, and he knows where you're going, Phoenix. My mind started racing. So he finally believes Seth is free? You're coming to help us? Zia shook her head. He's coming to stop you. Stop us? Zia, Seth's about to blow up the continent. My dad... My voice cracked. I hated how scared and powerless I sounded. My dad's in trouble. Zia reached out a shimmering hand, but it was just an image. Our fingers couldn't touch. Carter, I'm sorry. You have to see Desjardins' point of view. The House of Life has been trying to keep the gods locked up for centuries to prevent something like this from happening. Now that you've unleashed them, it wasn't my idea. I know, but you're trying to fight Seth with divine magic. Gods can't be controlled. You can end up doing even more damage. If you let the House of Life handle this, Seth is too strong, I said, and I can control Horace. I can do this. Zia shook her head. It will get harder as you get closer to Seth. You have no idea. And you do? Zia glanced nervously to her left. Her image turned fuzzy, like a bad television signal. We don't have much time. Mel will be out of the restroom soon. You've got a magician named Mel? Just listen. Desjardins is splitting us into 2 teams. The plan is for us to cut you off at either side and intercept you. If my team reaches you first, I think I can keep Mel from attacking long enough for us to all talk. Then maybe we can figure out how to approach Desjardins to convince him that we have to cooperate. Don't take this the wrong way, but why should I trust you? She pursed her lips, looking genuinely hurt. Part of me felt guilty. Well, part of me worried this was some kind of trick. Carter, I have something to tell you. Something that might help, but it has to be said in person. Tell me now. Father, speak. You are impossibly stubborn. Yeah, it's a gift. We locked eyes. Her image was fading, but I didn't want her to go. I wanted to talk longer. If you won't trust me, I'll have to trust you, Zia said. I will arrange to be in Los Cruces, New Mexico, tonight. If you choose to meet me, perhaps we can convince Mel. Then together we'll convince Desjardins. Will you come? I wanted to promise, just to see her, but I imagined myself trying to convince Sadie or Bast that this was a good idea. I don't know, Zia. Just think about it, she pleaded. And Carter, don't trust Amos. If you see him, her eyes widened. Mel's here, she whispered. Zia slashed her staff in front of her, and the image vanished. The Red Pyramid, Chapter 30. Bast Keeps a Promise. Hours later, I woke up in the RV's couch with Bast shaking my arm. We're here, she announced. I had no idea how long I'd been asleep, but at some point, the flat landscape and complete boredom had zonked me out, and I'd started having bad dreams about tiny magicians flying around in my hair, trying to shave me bald. Somewhere in there, I'd had a nightmare about Amos, too, but it was fuzzy. I still didn't understand why Zia would mention him. I blinked the sleep out of my eyes and realized my head was in Khufu's lap. The baboon was foraging my scalp for munchies. Dude, I sat up groggily, not cool. But he gave you a lovely hairdo, Sadie said. Ah! Khufu agreed. Bast opened the door of the trailer. Come on, she said. We'll have to walk it from here. When I got to the door, I almost had a heart attack. We were parked on the top of a mountain road so narrow, the RV would have toppled over if I'd sneezed wrong. For a second, I was afraid we were already in Phoenix because the landscape looked similar. The sun was just setting on the horizon. Rugged mountain ranges stretched out on either side, and the desert floor between them seemed to go on forever. In a valley to our left lay a colorless city, hardly any trees or grass, just sand, gravel, and buildings. The city was much smaller than Phoenix, though, and a large river traced its southern edge, glinting red in the fading light. The river curved around the base of the mountains below us before snaking off to the north. We're on the moon, Sadie murmured. El Paso, Texas, Bast corrected. And that's the Rio Grande. She took a big breath of the cool, dry air. A river civilization in the desert. Very much like Egypt, actually. Except for the fact that Mexico is next door. I think this is the best spot to summon Neftis. You really think she'll tell us Seth's secret name? Sadie asked. Bast considered. Neftis is unpredictable, but she has sided against her husband before. We can hope. That didn't sound very promising. I stared at the river far below. Why did you park us on the mountain? Why not closer? Bast shrugged, as if this hadn't occurred to her. Cats like to get as high up as possible, in case we have to pounce on something. Great, I said. So if we have to pounce, we're all set. It's not so bad, Bast said. We just climb our way down to the river through a few miles of sand, cacti, and rattlesnakes, looking out for the border patrol, human traffickers, magicians, and demons, and summon Neftis. Sadie whistled. Well, I'm excited. Ah, Khufu agreed miserably. He sniffed the air and snarled. He smells trouble, Bast translated. Something bad is about to happen. Even I could smell that, I grumbled, and we followed Bast down the mountain. Yes, Horace said. I remember this place. It's El Paso, I told him. Unless you went out for Mexican food, you've never been here. I remember it well, he insisted. The marsh, the desert. I stopped and looked around. Suddenly, I remembered this place too. About 50 yards in front of us, the river spread out into a swampy area, a web of slow-moving tributaries, cutting a shallow depression through the desert. Marsh grass grew tall along the banks. There must have been some kind of surveillance, it's being an international border and all, but I couldn't spot any. I'd been here in Ba form. I could picture a hut right there in the marsh, Isis and young Horace hiding from Seth, and just downriver, that's where I'd sensed something dark moving under the water, waiting for me. I caught Bast's arm when she was a few steps from the bank. Stay away from the water. She frowned. Carter, I'm a cat. I'm not going for a swim. But if you want to summon a river goddess, you really do need to do it at the riverbank. She made it sound so logical that I felt stupid, but I couldn't help it. Something bad was about to happen. What is it? I asked Horace. What's the challenge? But my ride-along god was unnervingly silent, as if waiting. Sadie tossed a rock into the murky brown water. It sank with a loud kerplunk. Seems quite safe to me, she said, and trudged down to the banks. Khufu followed hesitantly. When he reached the water, he sniffed at it and snarled. See? I said. Even Khufu doesn't like it. It's probably ancestral memory, Bast said. The river was a dangerous place in Egypt. Snakes, hippos, all kinds of problems. Hippos? Don't take it lightly, Bast warned. Hippos can be deadly. Was that what attacked Horace? I asked. I mean, in the old days when Seth was looking for him? Haven't heard that story, Bast said. Usually you hear that Seth used scorpions first, then later crocodiles. Crocodiles, I said, and a chill went down my back. Is that it? I asked Horace. But again, he didn't answer. Bast, does the Rio Grande have crocodiles? I very much doubt it. She knelt by the water. Now, Sadie, if you'd do the honors? How? Just ask for Nephthys to appear. She was Isis's sister. If she's anywhere on this side of the Duat, she should hear your voice. Sadie looked doubtful, but she knelt next to Bast and touched the water. Her fingertips caused ripples that seemed much too large, rings of force emanating all the way across the river. Hello, Nephthys, she said. Anyone home? I heard a splash downriver and turned to see a family of immigrants crossing midstream. I'd heard stories about how thousands of people cross the border from Mexico illegally each year, looking for work and a better life, but it was startling to actually see them in front of me. A man and a woman hurrying along, carrying a little girl between them. They were dressed in ragged clothes and looked poorer than the poorest Egyptian peasants I'd ever seen. I stared at them for a few seconds, but they didn't appear to be any kind of supernatural threat. The man gave me a weary look, and he seemed to come to a silent understanding. We both had enough problems without bothering each other. Meanwhile, Bast and Sadie stayed focused on the water, watching the ripples spread out from Sadie's fingers. Bast tilted her head, listening intently. What's she saying? I can't make it out, Sadie whispered. Very faint. You can actually hear something? I asked. Shh! They both said at once. Caged, Sadie said. No. What is that word in English? Sheltered, Bast suggested. She is sheltered far away. A sleeping host. What is that supposed to mean? I didn't know what they were talking about. I couldn't hear a thing. Khufu tugged at my hand and pointed downriver. Ah! The immigrant family had disappeared. It seemed impossible that they could cross the river so quickly. I scanned both banks. No sign of them. But the water was more turbulent where they'd been standing, as if someone had stirred it with a giant spoon. My throat tightened. Bast? Carter, we can barely hear Nefties, she said. Please. I gritted my teeth. Fine. Khufu and I are going to check out something. Shh, Sadie said again. I nodded to Khufu and we started down the riverbank. Khufu hid behind my legs and growled at the river. I looked back, but Bast and Sadie seemed fine. They were still staring at the water as if it were some amazing internet video. Finally, we got to the place where I'd seen the family, but the water had calmed. Khufu slapped the ground and did a handstand, which meant he was either breakdancing or really nervous. What is it? I asked, my heart pounding. He complained. That was probably an entire lecture in Baboon, but I had no idea what he was saying. Well, I don't see any other way, I said. If that family got pulled into the water or something, I have to find them. I'm going in. Ah! He backed away from the water. Khufu, those people had a little girl. If they need help, I can't just walk away. Stay here and watch my back. Khufu grunted and slapped his own face in protest as I stepped into the water. It was colder and swifter than I'd imagined. I concentrated and summoned my sword and wand out of the doo-wop. Maybe it was my imagination, but that seemed to make the river run even faster. I was midstream when Khufu barked urgently. He was jumping around on the riverbank, pointing frantically at the nearby clump of reeds. The family was huddled inside, trembling with fear, their eyes wide. My first thought, why are they hiding from me? I won't hurt you, I promised. They stared at me blankly, and I wished I could speak Spanish. Then the water churned around me, and I realized they weren't scared of me. My next thought, man, I'm stupid. Horace's voice yelled, jump! I sprang out of the water as if shot from a cannon, 20, 30 feet into the air. No way I should have been able to do that, but it was a good thing because a monster erupted from the river beneath me. At first, all I saw were hundreds of teeth, a pink maw 3 times as big as me. Somehow I managed to flip and land on my feet in the shallows. I was facing a crocodile as long as our RV, and that was just a half sticking out of the water. Its gray-green skin was rigid with thick plates like a camouflage suit of armor, and its eyes were the color of moldy milk. The family screamed and started scrambling up the banks. That caught the crocodile's attention. He instinctively turned toward the louder, more interesting prey. I'd always thought of crocodiles as slow animals, but then it charged the immigrants. I'd never seen anything move so fast. Use the distraction, Horace urged. Get behind it and strike. Instead, I yelled, Sadie, Bast, help! And I threw my wand. Bad throw. The wand hit the river right in front of the croc, then skipped off the water like a stone, smacking the crocodile between the eyes and shot back into my hand. I doubt I did any damage, but the croc glanced over at me, annoyed. Or you can smack it with a stick, Horace muttered. I charged forward, yelling to keep the croc's attention. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see the family scrambling to safety. Khufu ran along behind them, waving his arms and barking, to herd them out of harm's way. I wasn't sure if they were running from the croc or the crazy monkey, but as long as they kept running, I didn't care. I couldn't see what was happening with Bast and Sadie. I heard shouting and splashing behind me, but before I could look, the crocodile lunged. I ducked to the left, slashing with my sword. The blade just bounced off the croc's hide. The monster thrashed sideways, and its snout would have bashed my head in, but I instinctively raised my wand, and the croc slammed into a wall of force, bouncing off as if I were protected by a giant invisible energy bubble. I tried to summon the falcon warrior, but it was too hard to concentrate with a 6-ton reptile trying to bite me in half. Then I heard Bast scream, "No!" And I knew immediately, even without looking, that something was wrong with Sadie. Desperation and rage turned my nerves to steel. I threw out my wand and the wall of energy surged outward, slamming into the crocodile so hard it went flying through the air, tumbling out of the river and onto the Mexican shore. While it was on its back, flailing and off balance, I leaped, raising my sword, which was now glowing in my hands, and drove the blade into the monster's belly. I held on while the crocodile thrashed, slowly disintegrating from its snout to the tip of its tail, until I stood in the middle of a giant pile of wet sand. I turned and saw Bast battling a crocodile just as big as mine. The crocodile lunged, and Bast dropped beneath it, raking her knives across its throat. The croc melted into the river until it was only a smoky cloud of sand, but the damage had been done. Sadie lay in a crumpled heap on the riverbank. By the time I got there, Khufu and Bast were already at her side. Blood trickled from Sadie's scalp. Her face was a nasty shade of yellow. "What happened?" I asked. "It came out of nowhere," Bast said miserably. "Its tail hit Sadie and sent her flying. She never had a chance. Is she..." Khufu put his hand on Sadie's forehead and made a popping noise with his mouth. Bast sighed with relief. "Khufu says she'll live, but we have to get her out of here. Those crocodiles could mean..." Her voice trailed off. In the middle of the river, the water was boiling. Rising from it was a figure so horrible, I knew we were doomed. "Could mean that," Bast said grimly. "To start with, the guy was 20 feet tall. And I don't mean with a glowing avatar. He was all flesh and blood. His chest and arms were human, but he had light green skin, and his waist was wrapped in a green armored kilt like reptile's hide. He had the head of a crocodile, a massive mouth filled with white, crooked teeth, and eyes that glistened with green mucus. Yeah, I know, real attractive. His black hair hung in plaits down to his shoulders, and bull's horns curved from his head. If that wasn't weird enough, he appeared to be sweating at an unbelievable rate. Oily water poured off of him in torrents and pooled in the river. He raised his staff, a length of green wood as big as a telephone pole. Bast yelled, "Move!" and pulled me back as the crocodile man smashed a 5-foot-deep trench in the riverbank where I'd been standing. He bellowed, "Horace!" The last thing I wanted to do was say, "Here." But Horace spoke urgently in my mind. "Face him. Sobek only understands strength. Do not let him grasp you, or he will pull you down and drown you." I swallowed my fear and yelled, "Sobek, you, weakling? How the heck are you?" Sobek bared his teeth. Maybe it was his version of a friendly smile. Probably not. "That form does not serve you, Falcon God," he said. "I will snap you in half." Next to me, Bast slipped her knives from her sleeves. "Don't let him grasp you," she warned. "Already got the memo," I told her. I was conscious of Khufu off to my right, slowly lugging Sadie uphill. I had to keep this green guy distracted, at least until they were safe. Sobek, god of, I'm guessing crocodiles. Leave us in peace, or we'll destroy you. Good, Horus said. Destroy is good. Sobek roared with laughter. Your sense of humor has improved, Horus. You and your kitty will destroy me? He turned his mucus-filmed eyes on Bast. What brings you to my realm, cat goddess? I thought you didn't like water. On the last word, he aimed his staff and shot forth a torrent of green water. Bast was too quick. She jumped and came down behind Sobek, with her avatar fully formed, a massive, glowing, cat-headed warrior. Traitor! Bast yelled. Why do you side with chaos? Your duty is to your king. What king? Sobek roared. Ra? Ra is gone. Osiris is dead, again, the weakling. And this boy child cannot restore the empire. There was a time I supported Horus, yes, but he has no strength in this form. He has no followers. Seth offers power. Seth offers fresh meat. I think I will start with godling flesh. He turned on me and swung his staff. I rolled away from his strike, but his free hand shot out and grabbed me around the waist. I just wasn't quick enough. Bast tense, preparing to launch herself at the enemy, but before she could, Sobek dropped his staff, grasped me with both his massive hands, and dragged me into the water. The next thing I knew, I was drowning in the cold, green murk. I couldn't see or breathe. I sank into the depths as Sobek's hands crushed the air out of my lungs. Now or never, Horus said. Let me take control. No, I replied. I'll die first. I found the thought strangely calming. If I were already dead, there would be no point being afraid. I might as well go down fighting. I focused my power and felt strength coursing through my body. I flexed my arms and felt Sobek's grip weaken. I summoned the avatar of the Hawk Warrior and was instantly encased in a glowing golden form as large as Sobek. I could just see him in the dark water, his slimy eyes wide with surprise. I broke his grip and headbutted him, breaking off a few of his teeth. Then I shot out of the water and landed on the riverbank next to Bast, who was so startled she almost slashed me. Thank Ra, she explained. Yeah, I'm alive. No, I almost jumped in after you. I hate the water. Then Sobek exploded out of the river, roaring in rage. Green blood oozed from one of his nostrils. You cannot defeat me. He held out his arms, which were raining perspiration. I am Lord of the Water. My sweat creates the rivers of the world. Ew. I decided not to swim in rivers anymore. I glanced back, looking for Khufu and Sadie, but they were nowhere in sight. Hopefully, Khufu had gotten Sadie to safety, or at least found a good place to hide. Sobek charged, and he brought the river with him. A massive wave smashed into me, toppling me to the ground, but Bast jumped and came down on Sobek's back in full avatar form. The weight hardly seemed to bother him. He tried to grab her without any luck. She slashed repeatedly at his arms, back, and neck, but his green skin seemed to heal as quickly as she could cut him. I struggled to my feet, which in avatar form is like trying to get up with a mattress strapped to your chest. Sobek finally managed to grasp Bast and throw her off. She tumbled to a stop without getting hurt, but her blue aura was flickering. She was losing power. We played tag team with the crocodile god, stabbing and slashing, but the more we wounded him, the more enraged and powerful he seemed to get. More minions, he shouted. Come to me. That couldn't be good. Another round of giant crocs and we'd be dead. Why don't we get minions? I complained to Horus, but he didn't answer. I could feel him struggling to channel his power through me, trying to keep up our combat magic. Sobek's first fist smashed into Bast, and she went flying again. This time, when she hit the ground, her avatar flickered off completely. I charged, trying to draw Sobek's attention. Unfortunately, it worked. Sobek turned and blasted me with water. While I was blind, he slapped me so hard I flew across the riverbank, tumbling through the reeds. My avatar collapsed. I sat up groggily and found Khufu and Sadie right next to me. Sadie still passed out and bleeding, Khufu desperately murmuring in baboon and stroking her forehead. Sobek stepped out of the water and grinned at me. Far downstream in the dim evening light, about a quarter of a mile away, I could see 2 wake lines in the river coming toward us. Sobek's reinforcements. From the river, Bast yelled, "Carter, hurry! Get Sadie out of here!" Her face went pale with strain, and her cat warrior avatar appeared around her one more time. It was weak, though, barely substantial. "Don't!" I called. "You'll die!" I tried to summon the falcon warrior, but the effort made my insides burn with pain. I was out of power, and Horus's spirit was slumbering, completely spent. "Go," Bast yelled, "and tell your father I kept my promise." "No!" She leaped at Sobek. The 2 grappled, Bast slashing furiously across his face while Sobek howled in pain. The 2 gods toppled into the water, and down they went. I ran to the riverbank. The river bubbled and frothed. Then a green explosion lit the entire length of the Rio Grande, and a small black and gold creature shot out of the river as if it had been tossed. It landed on the grass at my feet, a wet, unconscious, half-dead cat. Bast? I picked up the cat gingerly. It wore Bast's collar, but as I watched, the talisman of the goddess crumbled to dust. It wasn't Bast anymore, only Muffin. Tears stung my eyes. Sobek had been defeated, forced back to the Duat or something. But there were still 2 wake lines coming toward us in the river, close enough now that I could see the monster's green backs and beady eyes. I cradled the cat against my chest and turned toward Khufu. "Come on, we have to..." I froze, because standing right behind Khufu and my sister, glaring at me, was a different crocodile. One that was pure white. "We're dead," I thought. And then, wait, a white crocodile? Its mouth opened, and it lunged straight over me. I turned and saw it slam into the 2 other crocodiles, the giant green ones that had almost killed me. "Philip?" I said in amazement, as the crocodiles thrashed and fought. "Yes," said a man's voice. I turned again and saw the impossible. Uncle Amos was kneeling next to Sadie, frowning as he examined her head wound. He looked up at me urgently. "Philip will keep Sobek's minions busy, but not for long. Follow me now, and we have a slim chance of surviving." The Red Pyramid, Chapter 31. I Deliver a Love Note. I'm glad Carter told that last bit, partly because I was unconscious when it happened, partly because I can't talk about what Bast did without going to pieces. But more on that later. I woke feeling as if someone had overinflated my head. My eyes weren't seeing anything the same. Out of my left, I saw a baboon bum. Out my right, my long-lost Uncle Amos. Naturally, I decided to focus on the right. "Amos?" He laid a cool cloth on my forehead. "Rest, child. You had quite a concussion." That, at least, I could believe. As my eyes began to focus, I saw we were outside under a starry night sky. I was lying on a blanket on what felt like soft sand. Khufu stood next to me, his colorful side a bit too close to my face. He was stirring a pot over a small fire, and whatever he was cooking smelled like burning tar. Carter sat nearby at the top of a sand dune, looking despondent and holding, was that muffin in his lap? Amos appeared much as he had when we last saw him, ages ago. He wore his blue suit with matching coat and fedora. His long hair was neatly braided, and his round glasses glinted in the sun. He appeared fresh and rested, not like someone who's been the prisoner of Seth. How did you get away from Seth? His expression darkened. I was a fool to go looking for him, Sadie. I had no idea how powerful he'd become. His spirit is tied to the Red Pyramid. So, he doesn't have a human host? Amos shook his head. He doesn't need one as long as he has the pyramid. As it gets closer to completion, he gets stronger and stronger. I sneaked into his lair under the mountain and walked right into a trap. I'm ashamed to say he took me without a fight. He gestured at his suit, showing off how perfectly fine he was. Not a scratch, just bam. I was frozen like a statue. Seth stood beside me outside his pyramid, like a trophy, and let his demons laugh and mock me as they passed by. Did you see Dad? I asked. His shoulders slumped. I heard the demons talking. The coffin is inside the pyramid. They're planning to use Osiris's power to augment the storm. When Seth unleashes it at sunrise, and it will be quite an explosion, Osiris and your father will be obliterated. Osiris will be exiled so deep into the Duat, he may never rise again. My head began to throb. I couldn't believe we had so little time. And if Amos couldn't save Dad, how could Carter and I? But you got away, I said, grasping for any good news. So there must be weaknesses in his defenses, or... The magic that froze me eventually began to weaken. I concentrated my energy and worked my way out of the binding. It took many hours, but finally I broke free. I sneaked out at midday when the demons were sleeping. It was much too easy. Doesn't sound easy, I said. Amos shook his head, obviously troubled. Seth allowed me to escape. I don't know why, but I shouldn't be alive. It's a trick of some sort. I'm afraid. Whatever he was going to say, he changed his mind. At any rate, my first thought was to find you, so I summoned my boat. He gestured behind him. I managed to lift my head and saw we were in a strange desert of white dunes that stretched as far as I could see in the starlight. The sand under my fingers was so fine and white it might have been sugar. Amos's boat, the same one that carried us from the Thames to Brooklyn, was beached at the top of a nearby dune, canted at a precarious angle as if it had been thrown there. There's a supply locker aboard, Amos offered, if you'd like fresh clothes. But where are we? White Sands, Carter told me, in New Mexico. It's a government range for test missiles. Amos said no one would look for us here, so we gave you some time to heal. It's about 7 in the evening, still the 28th. 12 hours or so until Seth, But too many questions swam around in my mind. The last thing I remembered, I'd been at the river talking to Nephtes. Her voice had seemed to come through the other side of the world. She'd spoken faintly through the current. So hard to understand, yet quite insistent. She told me she was sheltered far away in a sleeping host, which I couldn't make sense of. She'd said she could not appear in person, but that she would send a message. Then the water had started to boil. We were attacked. Carter stroked Muffin's head, and I finally noticed that the amulet, Bast's amulet, was missing. Sadie, I've got some bad news. He told me what had happened, and I closed my eyes. I started to weep. Embarrassing, yes, but I couldn't help it. Over the last few days, I'd lost everything. My home, my ordinary life, my father. I've been almost killed 6 times. My mother's death, which I'd never gotten over to begin with, hurt like a reopened wound. And now Bast was gone too? When Anubis had questioned me in the underworld, he'd wanted to know what I would sacrifice to save the world. What haven't I sacrificed already? I wanted to scream. What have I got left? Carter came over and gave me Muffin, who purred in my arms, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't Bast. She'll come back, won't she? I looked at Amos imploringly. I mean, she's immortal, isn't she? Amos tugged at the rim of his hat. Sadie, I just don't know. It seems she sacrificed herself to defeat Sobek. Bast forced him back to the Duat at the expense of her own life force. She even spared Muffin, her host, probably with the last shred of her power. If that's true, it would be very difficult for Bast to come back. Perhaps someday, in a few 100 years. No, not a few 100 years. I can't. My voice broke. Carter put his hand on my shoulder, and I knew he understood. We couldn't lose anyone else. We just couldn't. Rest now, Amos said. We can spare another hour, but then we'll have to get moving. Khufu offered me a bowl of his concoction. The chunky liquid looked like soup that had died long ago. I glanced at Amos, hoping he'd give me a pass, but he nodded encouragingly. Just my luck. On top of everything else, I had to take baboon medicine. I sipped the brew, which tasted as bad as it smelled, and immediately my eyelids felt heavy. I closed my eyes and slept. And just when I thought I had the soul leaving the body business sorted, my soul decided to break the rules. Well, it is my soul after all, so I suppose that makes sense. As my ba left my body, it kept its human form, which was better than the winged poultry look, but it kept growing and growing until I towered above White Sands. I've been told many times that I have a lot of spirit, usually not as a compliment. But this was absurd. My ba was as tall as the Washington Monument. To the south, past miles and miles of desert, steam rose from the Rio Grande, the battle site where Bast and Sobek had perished. Even as tall as I was, I shouldn't have been able to see all the way to Texas, especially at night. But somehow I could. To the north, even farther away, I saw a distant red glow, and I knew it was the aura of Seth. His power was growing as his pyramid neared completion. I looked down. Next to my foot was a tiny cluster of specks, our camp. Miniature Carter, Amos, and Khufu sat talking around the cooking fire. Amos's boat was no larger than my little toe. My own sleeping form lay curled in a blanket, so small I could have crushed myself with one misstep. I was enormous, and the world so small. That's how God sees things, a voice told me. I looked around but saw nothing but the vast expanse of rolling white dunes. Then, in front of me, the dunes shifted. I thought it was the wind until an entire dune rolled sideways like a wave. Another moved, and another. I realized I was looking at a human form, an enormous man lying in the fetal position. He got up, shaking white sand everywhere. I knelt down and cupped my hands over my companion to keep them from getting buried. Oddly, they didn't seem to notice, as if the disruption were no more than a sprinkle of rain. The man rose to his full height. at least a head taller than my own giant form. His body was made of sand that curtained off his arms and chest like waterfalls of sugar. The sand shifted across his face until it formed a vague smile. "Sadie Kane," he said, "I have been waiting for you." Geb. Don't ask me how, but instantly I knew this was the god of the earth. Maybe the sand body was a giveaway. "I have something for you." It didn't make sense that my ba would have the envelope, but I reached into my shimmering, ghostly pocket and pulled out the note from Newt. "Your wife misses you," I said. Geb took the note gingerly. He held it to his face and seemed to sniff it. Then he opened the envelope. Instead of a letter, fireworks burst out. A new constellation blazed in the night sky above us. The face of Newt, formed by 1,000 stars. The wind rose quickly and ripped the image apart, but Geb sighed contentedly. He closed the envelope and tucked it inside his sandy chest, as if there were a pocket right where his heart should be. "I owe you thanks, Sadie Kane," Geb said. "It has been many millennia since I saw the face of my beloved. Ask me a favor that the earth can grant, and it shall be yours." "Save my father," I said immediately. Geb's face rippled with surprise. What a loyal daughter. Isis could learn a thing from you." "Alas, I cannot. Your father's path is twined with that of Osiris, and matters between the gods cannot be solved by the earth." "Then I don't suppose you could collapse Seth's mountain and destroy his pyramid?" I asked. Geb's laughter was like the world's largest sand shaker. "I cannot intervene so directly between my children. Seth is my son, too." I almost stamped my foot in frustration. Then I remembered I was giant and might smash the whole camp. Could a ba do that? Better not to find out. "Well, your favors aren't very useful then." Geb shrugged, slowing off a few tons of sand with his shoulders. "Perhaps some advice to help you achieve what you desire. Go to the place of the crosses." "And where is that?" "Close," he promised. "And Sadie Kane, you are right. You have lost too much. Your family has suffered. I know what that is like. Just remember, a parent would do anything to save his children. I gave up my happiness, my wife. I took on the curse of Ra so that my children could be born." He looked up at the sky wistfully. "And while I miss my beloved more each millennia, I know neither of us would change our choice. I have 5 children whom I love." "Even Seth?" I asked incredulously. "He's about to destroy millions of people." "Seth is more than he appears," Geb said. "He is our flesh and blood." "Not mine." "No?" Geb shifted, lowering himself. I thought he was crouching, until I realized he was melting into the dunes. "Think on it, Sadie Kane, and proceed with care. Danger awaits you at the place of crosses, but you will also find what you need most." "Could you be a little more vague?" I grumbled. But Geb was gone, leaving only a taller-than-normal dune in the sand, and my ba sank back into my body. The Red Pyramid, Chapter 32, The Place of Crosses. I woke up with Muffin snuggled on my head, purring and chewing my hair. For a moment I thought I was home. I used to wake up with Muffin on my head all the time. Then I remembered I had no home, and Bast was gone. My eyes started tearing up again. "No," Isis's voice chided. "We must stay focused." For once, the goddess was right. I sat up and brushed the white sand off my face. Muffin meowed in protest, then waddled 2 steps and decided she could settle for my warm place on the blanket. "Good, you're up," Amos said. "We were about to wake you." It was still dark. Carter stood on the deck of the boat, pulling on a new linen coat from Amos's supply locker. Khufu loped over to me and made a purring sound at the cat. To my surprise, Muffin leaped into his arms. I've asked Khufu to take the cat back to Brooklyn, Amos said. This is no place for her. Khufu grunted, clearly unhappy with his assignment. I know, my old friend, Amos said. His voice had a hard edge. He seemed to be asserting himself as the alpha baboon. It is for the best. Ah, Khufu said, not meeting Amos's eyes. Unease crept over me. I remembered what Amos said, that his release might have been a trick of Seth's. In Carter's vision, Seth was hoping that Amos would lead us to the mountain so we could be captured. What if Seth was influencing Amos somehow? I didn't like the idea of sending Khufu away. On the other hand, I didn't see much choice but to accept Amos's help. And seeing Khufu there, holding Muffin, I couldn't bear the idea of putting either of them in danger. Maybe Amos had a point. Can he travel safely? I asked. Out there all by himself? Oh yes, Amos promised. Khufu, and all baboons, have their own brand of magic. He'll be fine. And just in case, he brought out a wax figurine of a crocodile. This will help if the need arises. I coughed. A crocodile? After what we just... It's Philip of Macedonia, Amos explained. Philip is wax? Of course, Amos said. Real crocodiles are much too difficult to keep. And I did tell you he's magic. Amos tossed the figurine to Khufu, who sniffed it and stuffed it into a pouch with his cooking supplies. Khufu gave me one last nervous look, glancing fearfully at Amos, then ambled over the dune with his bag in one arm and Muffin in the other. I didn't see how they would survive out there, magic or no. I waited for Khufu to appear on the crest of the next dune, but he never did. He simply vanished. Now then, Amos said, from what Carter has told me, Seth means to unleash his destruction tomorrow at sunrise. That gives us very little time. What Carter would not explain is how you plan to destroy Seth. I glanced at Carter and saw warning in his eyes. I understood immediately and felt a flush of gratitude. Perhaps the boy wasn't completely thick. He shared my concerns about Amos. It's best we keep that to ourselves, I told Amos flatly. You said so yourself. What if Seth attached a magic listening device to you or something? Amos's jaw tightened. You're right, he said grudgingly. I can't trust myself. It's just so frustrating. He sounded truly anguished, which made me feel guilty. I was tempted to change my mind and tell him our plan, but one look at Carter and I kept my resolve. We should head to Phoenix, I said. Perhaps along the way. I slipped my hand into my pocket. Newt's letter was gone. I wanted to tell Carter about my talk with the Earth God, Geb, but I didn't know if it was safe in front of Amos. Carter and I had been a team for so many days now. I realized that I resented Amos's presence a little. I didn't want to confide in anyone else. God, I just can't believe I just said that. Carter spoke up. We should stop in Las Cruces. I'm not sure who was more surprised, me or Amos. That's near here, Amos said slowly, but he picked up a handful of sand, murmured a spell, and then threw the sand into the air. Instead of scattering, the grains floated and formed a wavering arrow, pointing southwest toward a line of rugged mountains that made a dark silhouette against the horizon. As I thought, Amos said, and the sand fell to the earth. Las Cruces is out of our way by 40 miles, over those mountains. Phoenix is southwest. 40 miles isn't so bad, I said. Las Cruces. The name seemed strangely familiar to me, but I couldn't decide why. Carter, why there? He looked so uncomfortable, I knew it must have something to do with Zia. I had a vision. A vision of loveliness? I ventured. He looked like he was trying to swallow a golf ball, which confirmed my suspicions. I just think we should get there, he said. We might find something important. Too risky, Amos said. I can't allow it with the House of Life on our trail. We should stay in the wilderness, away from cities. Then suddenly, click. My brain had one of those amazing moments when it actually works correctly. No, Carter's right, I said. We have to go there. It was my brother's turn to look surprised. I am? We do? Yes. I took the plunge and told them about my talk with Geb. Amos brushed some sand off his shoulder. That's interesting, Sadie. But I don't know how Las Cruces comes into play. Because it's Spanish, isn't it? I said. Las Cruces, the crosses, just as Geb told me. Amos hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Get in the boat. A bit short on water for a boat ride, aren't we? I asked, but I followed him on board. Amos took off his coat and uttered a magic word. Instantly, the coat came to life, drifted to the stern, and grasped the tiller. Amos smiled at me as some of that old twinkle came back into his eyes. Who needs water? The boat shuddered and lifted into the sky. If Amos ever got tired of being a magician, he could have gotten a job as a skyboat tour operator. The vista coming over the mountains was quite stunning. At first, the desert seemed barren and ugly to me compared to the lush greens of England, but I was starting to appreciate that the desert had its own stark beauty, especially at night. The mountains rose like dark islands in a sea of lights. I'd never seen so many stars above us, and the dry wind smelled of sage and pine. Las Cruces spread out in the valley below, a glowing patchwork of streets and neighborhoods. As we got closer, I saw that most of the town was nothing very remarkable. It might have been Manchester or Swindon or any place, really, but Amos aimed our ship toward the south of the city, to an area that was obviously much older, with adobe buildings and tree-lined streets. As we descended, I began to get nervous. Won't they notice us in a flying boat? I asked. I mean, I know magic is hard to see, but... This is New Mexico, Amos said. They see UFOs here all the time. And with that, we landed on the roof of a small church. It was like dropping back into time or onto a Wild West film set. The town square was lined with stucco buildings, like an Indian pueblo. The streets were brightly lit and crowded. It looked like a festival, with stall vendors selling strings of red peppers, Indian blankets, and other curios. An old stagecoach was parked next to a clump of cacti. In the plaza's bandstand, men with huge guitars and loud voices played mariachi music. This is the historic area, Amos said. I believe they call it Masilla. Have a lot of Egyptian stuff here, do they? I asked dubiously. Oh, the ancient cultures of Mexico have a lot in common with Egypt, Amos said, retrieving his coat from the stern rudder. But that's a talk for another day. Thank God, I muttered. Then I sniffed the air and smelled something strange but wonderful, like baking bread and melting butter, only spicier, yummier. I am starving. It didn't take long, walking the plaza, to discover handmade tortillas. God, they were good. I suppose London has Mexican restaurants. We've got everything else. But I'd never been to one, and I doubt the tortillas would have tasted this heavenly. A large woman in a white dress rolled out balls of dough in her flour-caked hands, flattening and baked tortillas on a hot skillet and handed them to us on paper napkins. They didn't need butter or jam or anything. They were so delicate. They just melted in my mouth. I made Amos pay for about a dozen just for me. Carter was enjoying himself too, until he tried the red chili tamale at another booth. I thought his face would explode. "Hot," he announced. "Drink." "Eat more tortilla," Amos advised, trying not to laugh. "Bread cuts the heat better than water." I tried the tamales myself and found they were excellent. Not nearly as hot as a good curry, so Carter was just being a wimp, as usual. Soon we'd eaten our fill and began wandering the streets, looking for... well, I wasn't sure exactly. Time was a-wasting. The sun was going down, and I knew this would be the last night for all of us, unless we stopped Seth. But I had no idea why Geb had sent me here. "You will also find what you need most." What did that mean? I scanned the crowds and caught a glimpse of a tall, young guy with dark hair. A thrill went up my spine. Anubis? What if he was following me, making sure I was safe? What if he was what I needed most? Wonderful thought, except it wasn't Anubis. I scolded myself for thinking I would have luck that good. Besides, Carter had seen Anubis as a jackal-headed monster. Perhaps Anubis's appearance with me was just a trick of befuddling my brain. A trick that worked quite well. I was daydreaming about that, and about whether or not they had tortillas in the land of the dead, when I locked eyes with a girl across the plaza. "Carter." I grabbed his arm and nodded in the direction of Zia Rashid. "Someone's here to see you." Zia was ready for battle, in her loose black linen clothes, staff and wand in hand. Her dark choppy hair was blown to one side like she'd flown here on a strong wind. Her amber-colored eyes looked about as friendly as a jaguar's. Behind her was a vendor's table full of tourist souvenirs and a poster that read, "New Mexico, Land of Enchantment." I doubted the vendor knew just how much enchantment was standing right in front of his merchandise. "You came," Zia said, which seemed a bit on the obvious side. Was it my imagination, or was she looking at Amos with apprehension, even fear? "Yeah," Carter said nervously. "You, remember Sadie? And this is Amos," Zia said, uneasily. Amos bowed. "Zia Rashid. It's been several years. I see Iskander sent his best." Zia looked as if he'd smacked her in the face, and I realized Amos hadn't heard the news. Amos," I said, "Iskander is dead." He stared at us in disbelief, as if we told him the story. "I see," he said at last. "Then the new chief lector is Desjardins," I said. Bad news." Zia frowned. Instead of addressing Amos, she turned to me. "Do not dismiss Desjardins. He's very powerful. You'll need his help, our help, to challenge Seth." "Has it ever occurred to you," I said, "that Desjardins might be helping Seth?" Zia glared at me. "Never. Others might, but not Desjardins." Clearly, she meant Amos. I suppose that should have made me even more suspicious of him, but instead, I got angry. "You're blind," I told Zia. "Desjardins' first order as chief lector was to have us killed. He's trying to stop us, even though he knows Seth is about to destroy the continent. And Desjardins was there the night at the British Museum. If Seth needed a body..." The top of Zia's staff burst into flames. Carter quickly moved between us. "Whoa, both of you just calm down. We're here to talk." "I am talking," Zia said. "You need the House of Life on your side. You have to convince Desjardins you're not a threat." "By surrendering?" I asked. asked. No, thank you. I'd rather not be turned into a bug and squished. Amos cleared his throat. I'm afraid Sadie is right. Unless Desjardins has changed since I last saw him, he is not a man who will listen to reason. Zia fumed. Carter, could we speak in private? He shifted from foot to foot. Look, Zia, I agree we need to work together, but if you're going to try to convince me to surrender to the house, there's something I must tell you, she insisted. Something you need to know. The way she said that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Could this be what Geb meant? Was it possible that Zia held the key to defeating Seth? Suddenly, Amos tensed. He pulled his staff out of thin air and said, It's a trap. Zia looked stunned. What? No! Then we all saw what Amos had sensed. Marching towards us from the east end of the plaza was Desjardins himself. He wore cream-colored robes with the chief lector's leopard skin cape tied across his shoulders. His staff glowed purple. Tourists and pedestrians veered out of his way, confused and nervous, as if they weren't sure what was going on, but they knew enough to clear off. Other way, I urged. I turned and saw 2 more magicians in black robes marching in from the west. I pulled my wand and pointed it at Zia. You set us up. No, I swear. Her face fell. Mel must have told them. Right, I grumbled. Blame Mel. No time for explanations, Amos said, and he blasted Zia with a bolt of lightning. She crashed into the souvenir table. Hey! Carter protested. She's the enemy, Amos said, and we have enough enemies. Carter rushed to Zia's side, naturally, while more pedestrians panicked and scattered for the edges of the square. Sadie, Carter, Amos said, if things go bad, go to the boat and flee. Amos, we're not leaving you, I said. You're more important, he insisted. I can hold off Desjardins for... Look out! Amos spun his staff towards the 2 magicians in black. They'd been muttering spells, but Amos's gust of wind swept them off their feet, sending them swirling out of control at the center of a dust devil. They churned along the street, picking up trash, leaves, and tamales, until the miniature tornado tossed the screaming magicians over the top of a building and out of sight. On the other side of the plaza, Desjardins roared in anger. Cain! The chief lector slammed his staff on the ground. A crack opened in the pavement and began snaking towards us. As the crevice grew wider, the buildings trembled. Stucco flaked off the walls. The fissure would have swallowed us, but Isis's voice spoke in my mind, telling me the word I needed. I raised my wand. Quiet. Hari. Hieroglyphs blazed to life in front of us. The fissure stopped just short of my feet. The earthquake died. Amos sucked in a breath. Sadie, how did you... Divine words, Cain. Desjardins stepped forward, his face livid. The child dares speak the divine words. She is corrupted by Isis, and you are guilty of assisting the gods. Step off, Michael, Amos warned. Part of me found it amusing that Desjardins' first name was Michael, but I was too scared to enjoy the moment. Amos held out his wand, ready to defend us. We must stop Seth. If you're wise, I would what? Desjardins said. Join you? Collaborate? The gods bring nothing but destruction. No, Zia's voice. With Carter's help, she'd somehow managed to struggle to her feet. Master, we can't fight each other. That's not what Iskander wanted. Iskander is dead, Desjardins bellowed. Now, step away from them, Zia, or be destroyed with them. Zia looked at Carter. Then she set her jaw and faced Desjardins. No, we must work together. I regarded Zia with a new respect. You really didn't lead him here? I do not lie, she said. Desjardins raised his staff, and huge cracks appeared in the buildings all around him. Chunks of cement and adobe brick flew at us, but Amos summoned the wind and deflected them. Children, get out of here, Amos yelled. The other magicians won't stay gone forever. For once, he's right, Zia warned, but we can't make a portal. We've got a flying boat, Carter offered. Zia nodded appreciatively. Where? We pointed towards the church, but unfortunately, Desjardins was between it and us. Desjardins hurled another volley of stones. Amos deflected them with wind and lightning. Storm magic, Desjardins sneered. Since when is Amos Kane an expert in the powers of chaos? Do you see this, children? How can he be our protector? Shut up, Amos growled, and with a sweep of his staff, he raised a sandstorm so huge that it blanketed the entire square. Now, Zia said. We made a wide arc around Desjardins, then ran blindly towards the church. The sandstorm bit my skin and stung my eyes, but we found the stairs and climbed to the roof. The wind subsided, and across the plaza I could see Desjardins and Amos still facing each other, encased in shields of force. Amos was staggering. The effort was clearly taking too much out of him. I have to help, Zia said reluctantly, or Desjardins will kill Amos. I thought you didn't trust Amos, Carter said. I don't, she agreed. But if Desjardins wins this duel, we're all dead. We'll never escape. She clenched her teeth as if she were preparing for something really painful. She held out her staff and murmured an incantation. The air became warm. The staff glowed. She released it, and it burst into flame, growing into a column of fire and full meter thick and 4 meters tall. Hunt Desjardins, she intoned. Immediately, the fiery column floated off the roof and began moving slowly but deliberately towards the chief lector. Zia crumpled. Carter and I had to grab her arms to keep her from falling on her face. Desjardins looked up. When he saw the fire, his eyes widened with fear. Zia, he cursed, you dare attack me? The column descended, passing through the branches of a tree and burning a hole straight through them. It landed in the street, hovering just a few centimeters above the pavement. The heat was so intense that it scorched the concrete curb and melted the tarmac. The fire came to a parked car, and instead of going around, it burned its way straight through the metal, sawing the car in two. Good, Amos yelled from the street. Well done, Zia. In desperation, Desjardins staggered to his left. The column adjusted course. He blasted it with water, but the liquid evaporated into steam. He summoned boulders, but they just passed through the fire and dropped into melted, smoking lumps on the other side. What is that thing? I asked. Zia was unconscious, and Carter shook his head in wonder. But Isis spoke in my mind. A pillar of fire, she said with admiration. It is the most powerful spell a master of fire can summon. It is impossible to defeat, impossible to escape. It can be used to lead the summoner toward a goal, or it can be used to pursue any enemy, forcing him to run. If Desjardins tries to focus on anything else, it will overtake him and consume him. It will not leave him alone until it dissipates. How long? I asked. Depends on the strength of the caster, between 6 and 12 hours. I laughed aloud. Brilliant! Of course, Zia had passed out creating it, but it was still brilliant. Such a spell had depleted her energy, Isis said. She will not be able to work any magic until the pillar is gone. In order to help you, she's left herself completely powerless. She'll be all right, I told Carter. Then I shouted down to the plaza. Amos, come on, we've got to go. Desjardins kept backing up. I could tell he was scared of the fire, but he wasn't quite done with us. You will be sorry for this. You wish to play gods? Then you leave me no choice. Out of the duat, he pulled a cluster of sticks. No, they were arrows. About 7 of them. Amos looked at the arrows in horror. You wouldn't. No chief lector would ever. I summon Sekhmet, Desjardins bellowed. He threw the arrows into the air, and they began to swirl, orbiting Amos. Desjardins allowed himself a satisfied look. He looked straight at me. You chose to place your faith in the gods? He called. Then die by the hands of a god. He turned and ran. The pillar of fire picked up speed and followed. Children, get out of here, Amos yelled, encircled by the arrows. I'll try to distract her. Who? I demanded. I knew I heard the name Sekhmet before, but I'd heard a lot of Egyptian names. Which one is Sekhmet? Carter turned to me, and even with all we'd been through over the last week, I had never seen him so scared. We need to leave, he said. Now. The Red Pyramid, Chapter 33. We go into the salsa business. You're forgetting something, Horace told me. A little busy here, I thought back. You might think it's easy steering a magic boat through the sky. You'd be wrong. I didn't have Amos's animated coat, so I stood in the back trying to shift the tiller myself, which was like stirring cement. I couldn't see where we were going. We kept tilting back and forth while Sadie tried her best to keep an unconscious Zia from flopping over the side. It's my birthday, Horace insisted. Wish me happy birthday. Happy birthday, I yelled. Now shut up. Carter, what are you on about? Sadie screamed, grabbing the railing with one hand and Zia with the other as the boat tipped sideways. Have you lost your mind? No, I was talking to... Oh, forget it. I glanced behind us. Something was approaching. A blazing figure that lit up the sky. Vaguely humanoid, definitely bad news. I urged the boat to go faster. Did you get me anything? Horace urged. Will you please do something helpful? I demanded. That thing following us, is that what I think it is? Oh. Horace sounded bored. That's Sekhmet, the Eye of Horus, destroyer of the wicked, the great huntress, lady of the flame, etc. Great, I thought, and she's following us because the chief lector has the power to summon her once during his lifetime, Horace explained. It's an old, old gift. It goes back to the days when Ra first blessed man with magic. Once during his lifetime, I thought, and Desjardins chooses now? He never was very good at being patient. I thought the magicians don't like gods. They don't, Horace agreed. Just shows you what a hypocrite he is. But I suppose killing you was more important than standing on principle. I could appreciate that. I looked back again. The figure was definitely getting closer. A giant golden woman in glowing red armor, with a bow in one hand and a quiver of arrows slung across her back. And she was hurtling toward us like a rocket. How do we beat her? I asked. You pretty much don't, Horace said. She is the incarnation of the sun's wrath. Back in the days when Ra was active, she would have been much more impressive, but still, she's unstoppable. A born killer, a slaying machine. Okay, I get it, I yelled. What? Sadie demanded, so loud that Zia stirred. What? Her eyes fluttered open. Nothing, I shouted. We're being followed by a slaying machine. Go back to sleep. Zia sat up woozily. A slaying machine? You don't mean... Carter, veer right, Sadie yelled. I did, and a flaming arrow the size of a predator drone grazed our port side. It exploded above us, setting the roof of our boathouse on fire. I steered the boat into a dive, and Sekhmet shot past, then pirouetted in the air and irritating agility and dove after us. "We're burning," Sadie pointed out helpfully. "Noticed," I yelled back. I scanned the landscape below us, but there was nowhere safe to land, just subdivisions and office parks. "Die, enemies of Ra!" Sekhmet yelled. "Perish in agony!" "She's almost as annoying as you," I told Horace. "Impossible," Horace said. "No one bests Horace." I took another evasive turn and Zia yelled, "There!" She pointed toward a well-lit factory complex with trucks, warehouses, and silos. A giant chili pepper was painted on the side of the biggest warehouse, and a floodlight read, "Magic Salsa Inc." "Oh, please," Sadie said. "It's not really magic, that's just a name." "No," Zia insisted. "I've got an idea." "Those 7 ribbons?" I guessed. "The ones you used on Serkat?" Zia shook her head. "They can only be summoned once a year, but my plan..." Another arrow blazed past us, only inches from our starboard side. "Hang on!" I yanked at the tiller and spun the boat upside down, and just before the arrow exploded. The hull shielded us from the brunt of the blast, but the entire bottom of the ship was now on fire, and we were going down. With my last bit of control, I aimed the boat towards the roof of the warehouse, and we crashed through, slamming into a huge mound of something crunchy. I clawed my way clear of the boat and sat up in a daze. Fortunately, the stuff we'd crashed into was soft. Unfortunately, it was a 20-foot pile of dried chili peppers, and the boat had set them on fire. My eyes began to sting, but I knew better than to rub them, because my hands were now covered in chili oil. "Sadie?" I called. "Zia?" "Help!" Sadie yelled. She was on the other side of the boat, dragging Zia out from under the flaming hull. We managed to pull her free and slide down the pile onto the floor. The warehouse seemed to be a massive facility for drying peppers, with 30 or 40 mountains of chilies and rows of wooden drying racks. The wreckage of our boat filled the air with spicy smoke, and through the hole we'd made in the roof, I could see the blazing figure of Sekhmet descending. We ran, plowing through another pile of peppers. No, I didn't pick a peck of them, Sadie. Shut up. We hid behind a drying rack, where shelves of peppers made the air burn like hydrochloric acid. Sekhmet landed, and the warehouse floor shuddered. Up close, she was even more terrifying. Her skin glowed like liquid gold, and her chest armor and skirt seemed to be woven of tiles made from molten lava. Her hair was like a thick lion's mane. Her eyes were feline, but they didn't sparkle like Bast's or betray any kindness or humor. Sekhmet's eyes blazed like her arrows, designed only to seek and destroy. She was beautiful the way an atomic explosion is beautiful. "I smell blood," she roared. "I will feast on enemies of Ra until my belly is full." "Charming," Sadie whispered. "So Zia, this plan?" Zia didn't look so well. She was shivering and pale and seemed to have trouble focusing on us. When he first called Sekhmet to punish humans because they were rebelling against him, she got out of hand. "Hard to imagine," I whispered, as Sekhmet ripped through the burning wreckage of our boat. "She started killing everyone," Zia said. "Not just the wicked. None of the other gods could stop her. She would just kill all day until she was gorged down blood. Then she'd leave until the next day. So the people begged the magicians to come up with a plan, and..." "You dare hide!" Flames roared as Sekhmet's arrows destroyed pile after pile of dried peppers. "I will roast you alive." "Run now," I decided. "Talk later." Sadie and I dragged Zia between us. We managed to get out of the warehouse just before the whole place imploded from the heat, billowing a spicy hot mushroom cloud into the sky. We ran through a parking lot filled with semi-trailers and hid behind a 16-wheeler. I peeked out, expecting to see Sekhmet walk through the flames of the warehouse. Instead, she leaped out in the form of a giant lion. Her eyes blazed, and floating over her head was a disk of fire like a miniature sun. "The symbol of Ra," Zia whispered. Sekhmet roared. "Where are you, my tasty morsels?" She opened her maw and breathed a blast of hot air across the parking lot. Wherever her breath touched, the asphalt melted. Cars disintegrated into sand, and the parking lot turned a barren desert. "How did she do that?" Sadie hissed. "Her breath creates the deserts," Zia said. "That is the legend." Better and better. Fear was closing up my throat, but I knew we couldn't hide much longer. I summoned my sword. "I'll distract her. You two run." "No," Zia insisted. "There is another way." She pointed at a row of silos on the other side of the lot. Each one was 3 stories tall and maybe 20 feet in diameter, with a giant chili pepper painted on the side. "Petrol tanks?" Sadie asked. "No," I said. "Must be salsa, right?" Sadie stared at me blankly. "Isn't that a type of music?" "It's a hot sauce," I said. "That's what they make here." Sekhmet breathed in our direction, and the 3 trailers next to us melted into sand. We scuttled sideways and jumped behind a cinder block wall. "Listen," Zia gasped, her face beating with sweat. "When the people needed to stop Sekhmet, they got huge vats of beer and colored them bright red with pomegranate juice." "Yeah, I remember now," I interrupted. "They told Sekhmet it was blood, and she drank until she passed out. Then Ra was able to recall her into the heavens. They transformed her into something gentler, a cow goddess or something." "Hathor," Zia said. "That is Sekhmet's other form, the flip side of her personality." Sadie shook her head in disbelief. "So you're saying we offer to buy Sekhmet a few pints and she'll turn into a cow?" "Not exactly," Zia said, "but salsa is red, is it not?" We skirted the factory grounds as Sekhmet chewed up trucks and blasted huge swathes of the parking lot to sand. "I hate this plan," Sadie grumbled. "Just keep her occupied for a few seconds," I said, "and don't die." "Yeah, that's the hard bit, isn't it?" 1, I counted. 2, 3. Sadie burst into the open and used her favorite spell, Hati. The glyphs blazed over Sekhmet's head, and everything around her exploded. Trucks burst to pieces, the air shimmered with energy, the ground heaved upward, creating a crater 50 feet deep, into which the lioness tumbled. It was pretty impressive, but I didn't have time to admire Sadie's work. I turned into a falcon and launched myself toward the salsa tanks. Roar! Sekhmet leaped out of the crater and breathed desert wind in Sadie's direction. But Sadie was long gone. She ran sideways, ducking behind trailers and releasing a few lengths of magic rope as she fled. The ropes whipped through the air and tried to tie themselves around the lioness's mouth. They failed, of course, but they did annoy her. "Show yourself," Sekhmet bellowed. "I will feast on your flesh." Perched on a silo, I concentrated all my power and turned straight from falcon to avatar. My glowing form was so heavy, its feet sank into the top of the tank. "Sekhmet!" I yelled. The lioness whirled and snarled, trying to locate my voice. "Up here, kitty," I called. She spotted me and her ears went back. "Horus?" Unless you know another guy with a falcon head. She patted back and forth uncertainly, then roared in challenge. Why do you speak to me when I am in raging form? You know I must destroy everything in my path, even you. If you must, I said, but first, you might like to feast on the blood of your enemies. I drove my sword into the tank and the salsa gushed out in a chunky red waterfall. I leaped to the next tank and sliced it open, and again, until 6 silos full of magic salsa were spewing into the parking lot. Ha ha! Sekhmet loved it. She leaped into the red sauce torrent, rolling in it, lapping it up. Blood, lovely blood. Yeah, apparently lions aren't too bright or their taste buds aren't very developed. But Sekhmet didn't stop until her belly was bulging and her mouth literally began to smoke. Tangy, she said, stumbling and blinking. But my eyes hurt. What kind of blood is this? Nubian? Persian? Jalapeno, I said. Try some more, it gets better. Her ears were smoking now, too, as she tried to drink more. Her eyes were watering, and she began to stagger. Steam curled from her mouth. Hot mouth. Milk is good for that, I suggested. Maybe if you were a cow. Trick, Sekhmet groaned. You tricked. But her eyes were too heavy. She turned in a circle and collapsed, curling into a ball. Her form twitched and shimmered as her red armor melted into spots on her golden skin, until I was looking down at an enormous sleeping cow. I dropped off the silo and stepped carefully around the sleeping goddess. She was making cow snoring sounds like moos, moos. I waved my hand in front of her face, and when I was convinced she was out cold, I dispelled my avatar. Sadie and Zia emerged from behind a trailer. Well, said Sadie, that was different. I will never eat salsa again, I decided. You both did wonderfully, Zia said, but your boat is burned. How do we get to Phoenix? We, Sadie said. I don't recall inviting you. Zia's face turned salsa red. Surely you don't still think I led you into a trap? I don't know, Sadie said. Did you? I couldn't believe I was hearing this. Sadie, my voice sounded dangerously angry, even to me. Lay off. Zia summoned that pillar of fire thing. She sacrificed her magic to save us, and she told us how to beat the lioness. We need her. Sadie stared at me. She glanced back and forth between Zia and me, probably trying to judge how far she could push things. Fine. She crossed her arms and pouted. But we need to find Amos first. No, Zia said. That would be a very bad idea. Oh, so we can trust you but not Amos? Zia hesitated. I got the feeling that was exactly what she meant, but she decided to try a different approach. Amos would not want you to wait. He said to keep going, didn't he? If he survives Sekhmet, he will find us on the road. If not, Sadie huffed. So how do we get to Phoenix? Walk? I gazed across the parking lot, where one 16-wheeler was still intact. Maybe we don't have to. I took off the linen coat I'd borrowed from Amos's supply locker. Zia, Amos had a way of animating his coat so it could steer his boat. Do you know the spell? She nodded. It's fairly simple with the right ingredients. I could do it if I had my magic. Can you teach me? She pursed her lips. The hardest part is the figurine. The first time you enchant the piece of clothing, you need to smash a shabti into the fabric and speak a binding charm to meld them together. It would require a clay or wax figurine that has already been imbued with a spirit. Sadie and I looked at each other. and simultaneously said, "Doughboy!"